All right, hello and welcome to the Microsoft 365 Champions community. This session is one that we haven't done a session like this before, and excited to have one of our vendor partners that we collaborate with, Fulton Analytics, to join us, where we're going to be talking about next level analytics, integrating Power BI with Microsoft 365. We're going to talk about things like fabric and knitting, but it's not what you think. So. But these guys are near and dear to our heart as data nerds. I hope you guys don't mind that I call you that, because we like to call ourselves that sometimes, but I think you guys are way on that spectrum than we are. So anyway, this is going to be a great session, and we're definitely looking forward to learning from Fulton, Brent, and Robert here. And I'm hoping that if anyone strikes a chord with some of the stuff that they're going to go through, to reach out to them. And so we'll be tagging and everything in LinkedIn. Make sure you have some connections there. But with that said, Nina and I are just going to be mostly observers here. We might chime in a little bit, but we really appreciate you joining today or watching in the future. But for now, Robert, Brent, take it away.
Awesome. Thanks for having us. My name is Robert Gerads. I'm the founder CEO of Fulton Analytics. We are a Microsoft data and AI partner up in the Minneapolis, St. Paul, Twin Cities area. And so Brent and I have been working together on a lot of data and AI projects over the last few years. Power BI, Microsoft Power BI, celebrates its 10th birthday this month. And so kind of crazy to just watch the whole evolution of the Microsoft data and AI landscape over the past decade. But it's even been changing more in the past couple years. And that's how we had initially started talking to MyTech about the worlds of really the Microsoft Power Platform, in particular Power BI, Power Apps, Power Automate, colliding with the world of Microsoft 365. And now here recently, Microsoft has rolled out its Fabric unified ecosystem for cloud and AI. And really those three worlds are coming together. And so as we're talking to Nathan and Nina and the team at MyTech Partners, really, we wanted to have a conversation and demo how those three worlds are kind of coming together. So we're going to dive into that. And if you have questions, I think they can go ahead and post them in the comments area. Is that right, Nathan?
Yep.
Awesome.
That's correct.
And we can pause and make this as interactive as possible. And so, happy to answer questions as they come up. And Brent, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, sounds good. So as Robert mentioned, we are from Fulton Analytics. We work all things data, so we take no offense to the data nerds tag. We definitely love digging in, solving data puzzles, everything from integrations to aligning business logic back towards your data. We kind of do a little bit of everything. So reach out. We'd love to talk about what you're trying to accomplish, or maybe where you maybe have friction in your process today. So plan for today. So we're going to dive in and just do, I got a couple of slides, not too much. We're going to try to get to the demos as quick as we can here, but talk a little bit about, what is Power BI? How does it fit into the broader Microsoft platform? How does that tie into Fabric? And then kind of look at the big picture, and then we're going to jump over to some demos. So we're going to look at Power BI itself and how can you integrate that with Teams, PowerPoint, Outlook, some of those other pieces in your Microsoft world. Then we're going to talk a little bit about Fabric and kind of the next generation of Power BI. So there's lots of exciting things that are happening on that front, not only with Copilot, but also with the ability to write back and some other kind of neat little bells and whistles that we'll take a look at. And then whatever questions we have at the end. So feel free to drop those into the chat. So first off, Power BI, as Robert mentioned, Power BI reaches 10 years old this year. It's pretty incredible just looking at where the product started, and then where it is today. They're still on a monthly feature release schedule. So there's sort of always new things that are coming out, revisions, kind of cleanup, new ways to present your data, new ways to interact with your data. And now with Fabric, it just opens the door to so many more things. So the nice thing about it, it allows you to pull together that data from multiple sources so you can get it out of your data silos, bring it all together into semantic models. So once upon a time called data sets, new name is semantic model. So Microsoft loves to rename some things, but that's okay. And then you can put that out there in what used to be the data hub. Now you'll see the term One Lake. That's kind of the updated Fabric terminology for it. But the idea is to bring all that data together, get it curated, get it cleaned up, and then make it available to your users to do the analysis and to answer the questions that they're trying to answer. So we can get all your business logic in there, definitions, allows you to get to that single source of truth. And then those report builders can build and share through the Power BI service. So this is out there in the cloud. It's in your Microsoft tenant, but you can use this to share reports with each other, share with external users, and then you can also pull it back into some of the other Office 365 products as well. So that's kind of the glue that pulls it all together, is that service that's out there. So a couple things about Power BI is, and this is where, as we start with organizations and kind of get them up and running on Power BI, we really have to talk about what is it and what is it not. So it is a tool to visualize and explore your data. So it's meant to pull things in. It's meant to have charts. It's meant to have graphs, maps, visuals. It's really geared towards presenting data in that type of way. There's a lot of ways you can do data storytelling and some other kind of narrative type features as well. It's meant to be a platform for sharing those reports and dashboards for internal, external consumption. And it's also available via desktop and mobile. So the mobile side of things has kind of grown in leaps and bounds in the last year or so. But you can put together kind of a cool little KPI, master dashboard type thing, right visible from your users right on their devices. So pretty cool. But what is Power BI not? So it's not used to enter or manipulate data directly. And I put an asterisk there because we're going to talk about how that's changing over time and how we can kind of work with that. But it was really designed to be that visualization and exploration tool, not really meant to be like a tabular editing source like an Excel. And that is the number one question we get, is how can we make this behave like Excel? It's not really designed to from the ground up, but there are ways to get around that and to do some things that we're going to take a look at a little later on. Power BI is not a database. So this is another one that, it's not really meant to function like Access did once upon a time. Even some folks say Excel is their database, but it's not a database directly. We generate those semantic models, which kind of looks and feels to an end user like a database, but it's not really built to do that data processing. It's more reading from that database to present it to the end users. So just a distinction we like to make. And then the other one, it's really not meant to be a saved search or a query tool. So if your users are looking to go in and, run, like the old Crystal report style, there's things we can do with like paginated reports and things to sort of get to that functionality. But Power BI Core, really not meant for that. There's better tools out there if you need to do, regular data extracts or generate those kind of reports. So just some things we kind of like to get out there right at the beginning. So now the next question, and this is where I've been spending a lot of time the last, 2 years, just over 2 years, announced in May of 2023, but Microsoft Fabric. So this is really Microsoft's evolution of their data platform. So as you can see there, Power BI is one of the tiles. So Power BI is fully contained inside of Fabric. Whether you use the rest of Fabric or not, it's in there. It's tied into that ecosystem. But you can see what Fabric brings is some of the best pieces from the Azure world. So you'll see things like Data Factory up there. Even the analytics section there uses a lot of kind of the pieces of Synapse once upon a time. They've rebuilt it all, but they've taken some of the pieces of what worked there, what went well, and pulled that into Fabric. Now we have native databases in Fabric. That's a new one as of last fall. So you can generate a SQL database right inside of Fabric. You don't have to provision a server or anything. You just run it up. You can write data in and out of it. Pretty big evolution in that world. Yeah. And then they've also really revamped that real-time intelligence side of things. So if you have streaming data of any sort, you can pull that in and do some cool stuff.
Yeah, and we have a demo here that we'll get into here shortly that'll really make all these pieces come to life, and really show, how is this relevant to the Microsoft 365 community? Because Microsoft is putting a lot of time and energy and elbow grease into the integration of these communities, right? These families of Microsoft products. And when I explain Fabric in layman's terms, it's often your classic Microsoft bundle, right? Microsoft wanted to take all of their legacy data and AI tools that they had, bundle them together with some of their new innovation around AI. And you'll see here in your Copilot, really Microsoft Fabric and that ecosystem is a lot of what's underneath the hood for a lot of the Copilot, a lot of the AI capabilities that everybody's buzzing about today. So as we get into the demo, we'll be able to actually showcase how these pieces sort of come to life for a day-to-day business user.
And Robert and Brent, I'd love to chime in. I think that's one of the things that people have probably heard or read about the word Fabric and Microsoft Fabric, but this visual, in my opinion, is super helpful to kind of see, all right, how Power BI fits into the mix. So I appreciate just that simplicity of it, because I do think this is one of the confusing things that people don't know how these things connect, including myself, by the way. So this is, I knew I was going to learn on this journey as well. So thanks. I love that visual.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah. No, go ahead.
Yeah, and Brent and Robert, just as a newbie to this as well, I think just from the little bit of research that I did, it looked like one of the biggest problems to solve was just so many different data sources and different engines and different languages, and trying to find a way for different teams to all kind of make sure that they're kind of all singing from the same hymn sheet, so to speak.
Yeah.
And it seemed like Fabric really is the answer to that, and that there's a the way to unify all of those data sources and kind of how they're queried and so on. Is that a correct statement or a fair statement?
Yeah, yep, that's exactly it. And some of when they launched Fabric, the initial sort of presentations that came out, it was really about that unified platform to get everything together on that level playing field. So one thing to call out here is you see there One Lake listed in the middle. That really is the foundation of what makes Fabric work and allows you to seamlessly pass that data to all these different elements. So once you bring in your data into One Lake, it goes into a standardized format. So it's Parquet files under the hood, Delta tables. So there's some of that temporal tracking and things that you can do. But by getting it all into that format, each of the engines has been rewritten to work with all of these different modules. So the Data Factory one is reading off the same data that Power BI is pulling from. So it eliminates the need to duplicate your data. And it eliminates those data silos that tend to develop in organizations, because it is one lake. So from an admin standpoint, your data is all in that one lake. You decide how it gets kind of sliced and diced from a security standpoint, which, that is one of the pieces that's probably evolved the most in the last year with Fabric. But your data is brought together. So when it comes to passing it from, that team that's doing, some of the more like, say, data science or ML, passing it over to your analysts who are doing more reporting in Power BI, even connecting back out to, Excel and things like that. Everybody's reading from one lake. Everybody's reading from that same source of truth. So, yeah.
So I guess with that unified view, that means also unified view to do governance and monitoring as well.
Yes,
not
exactly.
just the
That's another discussion, huh?
I'm always going to ask about governance.
Yeah. And you see Purview down there. Purview has kind of grown by leaps and bounds in the last year as well. They've changed their pricing model on that a little bit right at the end of 2024. So we're starting to get a lot more interest in implementing Purview and really getting that kind of big picture data governance view, which integrates nicely with Fabric. So everything that's happening in Fabric is indexed back to Purview, to their cataloging. They've got some cool stuff around data health and data observability that they're rolling out. So it's pretty exciting to see that product sort of evolve into something that is much more attractive, especially to the clients that we have worked with.
Yeah. Well, should we dive into the fun stuff, Brent?
I got a couple more.
Oh, okay, I don't want to rush you through your slides, but
well, and this one, so I'd like to call this one out, and shout out to Kurt Bueller. If you're not following him, he's a great follow for anything Fabric and Power BI. But he put together this graphic that really emphasized that those semantic models. So before, once upon a time, when we built the Power BI data sets, they were really meant to feed Power BI reports, and that was about it. But in the new Fabric world, the idea is that semantic model, so the kind of evolved data set, now that semantic model can feed many different parts of your organization. So not only Power BI reports, but you can also go back to the data scientists. They can tap into that, extract information, do their work, put it back into the model ecosystem. Your business end users can get to it. You can do some cool things with real-time alerts. So, like if sales, say you have a record sales day and you want to alert everybody, you can automate some of that kind of stuff. So it's very cool. And I always like to emphasize with this too, that, Fabric is a team sport. So when it comes to implementing a Fabric project, because of all the different pieces that are in there, from the data engineering to data science to report building, all those different pieces, it's really tough to find a single individual who is an expert at all things Fabric. So I've been deep into it for 2 years. I would say I'm pretty good in a couple of these categories, but there's definitely pieces of this that I lean on other people on my team because they're more experienced in their kind of niche area. So as you get into Fabric, and especially looking into building this model that's going to serve these different things, it's important to get the right voices in the room and tackle it from a team standpoint. And I got one more. I'd like to throw this one in because Fabric, as with all things Microsoft, it gets thrown out into the world, sometimes maybe not fully formed. So, Fabric, I like this image here. So when we started, we had that outline, we knew that eventually, we were hearing about this beautiful horse. That's where we're going. I'd say, we're right about there. Just in the last, I'd say probably 6 months, 8 months or so, we're to the point where it is really making sense to start getting some more workloads in there. So they've gotten enough of the data integration pieces, they've gotten enough security pieces in there that you can really consider it for those production workloads nowadays. So it's moving, but it's continually changing. So it's an important thing that we try to emphasize as well, that it's not fully baked, but it's getting better and better, literally by the day sometimes, with when they're rolling out features. So. Okay, and one more. I like to talk about this piece, especially, thinking about the Microsoft world. So we've got on one side of the fence there, we've got kind of the Office world, with including the Power Platform elements. So we've got Power Apps down there. It's got Yammer down there, which I don't know if anybody uses Yammer anymore, but we've sort of had that side of the fence. And then there's been the Azure side of the fence. And this is something I didn't necessarily realize until getting a little deeper into the industry, that those two things are sort of built in their own world. And there is kind of a dividing line in between. The ways to communicate back and forth are getting better and better all the time, which is the good news. But Power BI has always kind of straddled that center line. So it initially was pitched as being, a piece of the Power Platform and kind of integrated in that world. But the back end of it has always been in the Azure. So it's kind of had one foot in both of these Microsoft worlds, which can be a good and bad thing. But now with Fabric is pretty firmly on the Azure side of that line. So it's important to know from just the way you license it. So all the licensing for Fabric goes through the Azure portal as opposed to through the old Office admin portal. So there's a couple things you got to consider there. And then when it comes to passing things back and forth, there's some other things that you have to consider in terms of just where do you set permissions, where do you set roles, all that good stuff. So the nice thing is that we've got Entra, the old Active Directory, kind of sitting over the top of both of these things that sort of help to pull those things together from a user standpoint. But when it comes to getting tools, talking to other tools, you really need to have the right people with the experience on kind of the right side of the fence to knit those two things together. So something I like to call out just as part of that a little bit.
And you gotta appreciate that he just used Fabric and knit in the same sentence, talking about data. So I just want to make sure you call that out.
It's almost seamless. I don't even catch myself doing it anymore. It just kind of happens.
There will be more puns. If you think of any other good ones that we should be using, feel free to put them in the comments, and we can direct those to the marketing team itself. So, but part of what we want to do here as well is really just show the integration of all of these things and show how the Fabric pieces, the Power BI pieces interact with what you're doing already today inside of Microsoft 365, inside of SharePoint, inside of Power Platform, and so on and so forth. And so, probably the number one thing that we come across from a Power BI standpoint is just, where do we consume it? How do we expose our end users to it? And so what you're actually looking at here is a real live Power BI report embedded in Microsoft Teams. And this is embedded in one of our Teams channels here. Brent has it pulled up right now. But super powerful when you start to think through, you can embed this report inside of Teams which your organization might already be using for its workplace collaboration. We use Teams internally for all of our video calls, all of our chat, all of our file share. Everything's in a single ecosystem. And now you can go ahead and put this dashboard right in there. And so as you see here, Fulton Snacks Company is not a real company. We wish it was some days. Some of the snacks sound delicious as we dive in. But what you see here is a landing page. We're big believers in building, when you build a Power BI report, to build a landing page just for easy navigation. You see the scrolling bar across the bottom. If you're a sports fan, it makes me think of the ESPN days of all the scores scrolling across the bottom. It might be hard to see here on the live stream, but you can kind of see the different pieces: Riley's rice rolls, Brent's bubblegum bonbons. It looks like it sounds tasty. But Brent, if you want to go ahead and just click on the sales revenue and profit summary, the first one. So as he hovers over it, you'll actually see the report kind of pop up on hover. That's a little customization that you can do in Power BI. If you go ahead and just open that, Brent. This actually brings you now to a fully interactive, a live Power BI report. You can view it this way. There's a number of ways you can view it, but you can actually, Brent, if you want to pop out the view to make it just a little bit bigger here. It's right at the very. Yeah, it's one of those. There you go. Now folks can see it here. So again, seamless Power BI dashboard. You guys have all seen Power BI dashboards, but there's some little tips and tricks in a Power BI dashboard to really make it pop out and stand out. And Brent, why don't you go ahead and select Robert's Raisins from the brand here? You see all the slicer panels up to the left here. You can go ahead and slice. And so we want to look at Robert's Raisins, and immediately we select that brand, that snack, and right away we can see October is our best month. Something is happening in New Mexico because they're buying more of Robert's Raisins than anywhere else. We see also a pretty heavy consumer, direct to consumer is our largest segment at 59% in the pie chart there. And so this is where most report builders, they stop here and they don't get beyond this point. What we want to do and what we believe in with all of our reports is how do we create speed insight? How do we get to that next question? And so, Brent, if you hover over the October revenue here, you'll see a drill through pop up, and you can drill through right into a detail page. And so go ahead and drill through, and immediately we can dive into the detail page. And we're big believers in building these detail pages in a way that makes users think twice about exporting to Excel. If you've used Power BI, or if you're not using Power BI, it's because you probably have a bunch of Excel reports and you're like, these are good enough. Why do I need Power BI? If you use Power BI, one of the common things and one of the most offensive things you can do to Brent and I is ask, how do I export this to Excel? We get the question. We're very forgiving people, but by zooming into this and looking at this right away, again, it gets you to that next level of insight. And you can see on your screen here, might be a little small to look at, but we have Karen Ferguson, who is one of our top consumers of Robert's Raisins. I've never met Karen Ferguson directly, but she's obviously a big fan of our product. And so to be able to just kind of drill into that level. And I know the question is, this is great, but I need to do some of my own calculations here and everything. And there is still the ability to, believe it or not, export to Excel. And right, again, we're still in Microsoft Teams, but Brent, if you can hit the three buttons over there, and it'll actually go ahead and export to or we can actually drill through, Brent, to the actual web portal as well, if that's easier. But there's the ability. Again, we can still get into Excel. Looking at, again, the integration between Power BI, Teams, and now Excel that we're kind of pulling into this this world. And so you see these three products working together seamlessly, all within your Microsoft 365 environment in your tenant. And so Brent can go ahead and export that, and now you have an Excel file that you can go ahead and work with as well. So, and then right from here, Brent, if you want to just open up, there's a way to get directly to the service right from this report. It's from the Teams report as well. But if you want to open up the Power BI report in the service, you can show some other integration with other Microsoft products as well.
And as you're doing that, like Robert, I think what you just talked about as far as not exporting it to Excel is, I get it that if there are certain ways you want to look at the data, and there's certain filters or views or timeframes or whatever, way better to build that into the report and the structure or the drill through than to force people to export it. Then, but if you need to export it because you're trying to do something different, then that makes sense, right? But like in general, you don't want to have your team spend extra clicks exporting and then filtering. You want to give them the insights, like you said, like give them the insights that they need at a hover or at a click, as opposed to having to do more work.
Yeah, and if you are in a lot of times we'll ask why, and a lot of times the why is why we need to calculate this percentage. Well, we can calculate the percentage in Power BI, and all you have to do is hover over it, or we can, and so on and so forth. But Brent, if you want to pull that back up, one of the other things that a lot of folks don't necessarily know is we'll use the same sales revenue report. Brent is the you might think this is great, but man, my executive team, they don't want to see Power BI, right? I got to prepare them a PowerPoint at the end of every month. I got to present back what we have here. This is a feature that came out about a year ago. Yeah, use the same. It's like the data. Oh, there we are. But right from here, right from Power BI, and you can go ahead and you can export the entire live report right into PowerPoint. And so Brent can go, he can click right on this. A lot of Power BI users don't even know that this is necessarily available to them. But Brent can go ahead, he can click, and he can actually export this to a live PowerPoint. So you can actually interact with the dashboard in a PowerPoint. Go ahead, create your other slides that the executive team is looking to use, and it becomes a really powerful tool as you're working through it. Saves you a lot of copy and paste. Some folks want to export to Excel because they just want to copy and paste into a PowerPoint. We've got that as well. I need a big table that I can copy and paste into the PowerPoint for my executive team. And so as you see right here, it's the same report, fully interactive in Power BI. So if Brent goes and clicks on the state, it'll go ahead, it'll filter the rest of the report based off of what he's clicked on there. So again, a little thing that your casual Power BI developer may or may not know exists, but as you're getting to the end of the month, you got that executive presentation, you need something quick, something shiny to get the executive team excited. Really, really simple capability there. So we've touched here on integration with Teams, integration with PowerPoint now. We've showed kind of the export to Excel feature. The other thing you can do is, and we don't see enough of our clients using this feature, is you can go ahead and you can actually subscribe to Power BI alerts. And so right from the Power BI service, Brent will bring us back there. There's a little subscribe button. And Brent, I think without your permission, already subscribed you to an alert.
I think I got the email earlier.
But at 11:15, Brent got an email alert here. You can identify which users are going to get it, the time of day, the frequency. And in this case, we said we want a link to the report, but we also want a PDF. And so Brent, if you have the email up here, we can take a look at kind of how that comes through. And so right from here, there's a link to the report, a little screenshot of the report that's coming through. And then there's also the PDF file as well at the very top. And so Brent can go ahead and you can open up the PDF report. You can determine what shows up, but this is now a PDF file that will get emailed to whoever you want it to be emailed to arrive in their Outlook inbox, at whatever frequency you determine. And a lot of times what we do when we are working with our clients don't even know that this is possible. And our goal is we want to build a report that's so valuable that they want to be using it every day, or we at least want to remind them every day, like, these insights are available to you. You can look at the quick PDF or you can log in. But again, there's some integration there with Outlook. And then the last piece before I kind of turn over to some of Brent's demos is we were just meeting with a client last week, and the president, it was a construction company over in Edina. And we were showing them some of the Power BI stuff and some of the data engineering that Brent and the team had done. And the president kind of stopped everyone and he said, so what you're telling me is I can run our entire business from one screen. And we said, that's exactly what we're telling you. And granted, there's still some things that need to be integrated, but we were able to show him that the very next day, an example of, in our Fulton Snacks demo, a Power BI mobile app and the ability to uncover or create these KPI cards. So he can be working from turns out he had a cabin in northern Wisconsin, or like you can be working from the cabin in northern Wisconsin, pull this up and be able to see this mobile view and to tell you every morning, is my business doing good? Is it doing poorly? If it's doing poorly, who do I need to reach out to? And so on and so forth. And you can see here, might not show up, but you can see I have the mobile app on my phone. And this goes into kind of the last piece, and I'll turn it over to Brent to kind of dive into his fun stuff, is when you're looking at Power BI, when you're looking at Fabric, when you're looking at Microsoft 365, part of the attraction for organizations that we work with is the single sign-on, is the security. It's the same username, the same email, the same password to log into Power BI, to log into that mobile app that I just showed you, to log into Teams, to log into Outlook. And from a security standpoint, your organization loves this, right? They love the idea of, if something happens, we can reset the password, we can control the workspace, we can control the Microsoft Entra account and be able to lock things down and secure things appropriately. And so I know I kind of rushed through some of those things, but in about 10 minutes, we looked at how Microsoft 365 with Teams, PowerPoint, Excel, Outlook, the mobile app, and then the Microsoft 365 single sign-on fully integrate to tell the story around how Fulton is doing, who's buying Robert's raisins in New Mexico. And we've been able to put those insights at the fingertips of the executive team. So,
Robert, that was woven well together. There.
And Robert and Brent, just kind of as you're showing the different ways of sharing some of the data, one of the questions we've had here in the comments section is, what's the biggest challenge you face when sharing Power BI dashboards with non-technical teams?
Yeah, that's a great question. At the end of the day, people will revert back to whatever behavior. It's a change behavior thing. And so you can build them the most pristine Power BI dashboard, but if you don't take the time to put your arm around them and show them where it is, how to use it, give them permission to even try and break it. A lot of times they're scared, well, I don't want to use it and break it. It's like, no, go try and break it, because we've built it in a way where you can't break the data. You might be able to delete a visual, but we can add that back. But it's that little, we call it analytics enablement, but it's putting your arm around those end users, spending the time with them, showing them why this is a better approach than that Excel workbook that they spend 40 hours every month pulling data from all these different places, cobbling it together, copying and pasting into a PowerPoint, just because that's what they've always done. And so hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, and one other added one, and maybe you want to touch on it at the end of this session, but what feature in Microsoft Fabric are you most excited to explore this year?
That's actually the perfect transition to
Oh,
Brent's,
great.
Brent's time here. And so
Yep, that's I'm going to show probably the what I am the most excited about coming up here in a moment. But
all right, Brent. So before you go there, I'd love to make a comment on that last question, just because, like, I think what I appreciate about one of the, relative to what you presented is that, you know, integrating the dashboards into things that people are already using, right? They're typically already using Teams. So if you can build it as like a tab in a channel where their team collaborates and meets, or you can send it to their email, or like it's built into a PowerPoint that they're participating in or whatever. Like I love that too, because I think that makes this, as opposed to having to think about logging into a different web page or something like that, where it's not just part of their experience, and even then you can make it part of SharePoint, right? Where that's just, it's something there. So I think there's always a training component and like a comfort level component, especially when people think they might break something. They're like, I don't want to touch it. But like, I love that you showed the different ways in which it integrates with the different solutions that people are likely already using all day, every day anyway. So
yeah, for sure. We try to meet the users where they are and, you know, kind of assess, you know, what is that comfort level to start with. But one of the things that's probably the most valuable for us as part of the development process is to really just, you know, kind of turn it over to them and let them drive. So once we have something on the page, we like to get them in the mix and just to have them be the ones clicking around, because just watching what people try to do gives us a sense of what they want to do. And we can kind of read between the lines, or, you know, even just ask explicit questions and just say, okay, you're trying to click on that. What are you hoping to do next? And we can really work iteratively with them through that to really customize what they're getting, because we come in fairly often where folks had either, you know, built some Power BI reports in-house, or, you know, maybe worked with another partner to build them, but they got kind of a canned solution. So, you know, kind of an off the shelf, you know, it's pointed at their data, but it's not really customized. And that's where we find, by spending that, you know, working session time with them to really figure out, what are you trying to answer? You know, what questions are you trying to get to? What's going to help you to, you know, go do something else with your time? Because, you know, you don't want to look at reports all day. You want to run your business. So what can we do to get you to that point faster? So, and it is a lot of training. I mean, there's little things like, I love that they make this bright green up here, because this just resets it back to whatever the published version was. So that's where I find people, especially who are non-technical, they start slicing and dicing and clicking on things, and all of a sudden they're like, I don't know how to get back to the beginning. But they put this one up here as kind of a quick escape valve. You know, it's kind of the ejector seat, I like to call it, where kicks it right back to the way it was published. So that's kind of get you back to square one. And then we also try to put in some things too. This is a little hard to see, but when I hover there, it says click to see information about this report. And so the other question we get all the time is, you know, what do these metrics mean, or who defined what sales is? You know, I mean, it's like, it's amazing how often organizations have disagreement on some of those core measures. So a lot of times we try to, as part of our process, you know, get that definition from everybody and get it boiled down to the right definition. But then we try to put it right here in the report. So as much as possible, we want to keep them in the interface and give them the information they need, so that they don't have to click out to a data dictionary or something else. I mean, we can do that as a, you know, an additional tool, but if we can give it to them right where they're seeing it on the page, that really helps that adoption just happen faster, because they get trust in the data, they know how it's being calculated, and it just helps everybody to get on board with Power BI.
Yeah. And I think Brent and Nathan, you guys, and I know we have 15 minutes left, and I know cool stuff he could probably go for another hour. But a perfect segue in, like, how do we get the business units aligned? And one of the things that Brent will show you here shortly is we get brought into a lot of clients that maybe have hundreds of Power BI reports, but each of those reports is built off of a different semantic model. The semantic model used to be named a data set. And about a year and a half ago, they changed it to semantic model, which is going to be a huge part of the future. But what we do is we're able to work with those business users, like Brent was just describing, and Nathan, you alluded to come up with some common data definitions, data standards, business logic, and consolidate those business models or those data models into a single centralized semantic model, or a couple of semantic models. And Brent's kind of showing the lineage view here of what that looks like. But where it's so powerful is, if you have 100 reports in an organization, or even 20, now all of a sudden when Nina looks at her report and Nathan looks at his report, the data matches. They're not arguing about whose data is right. How did you scrape that data? Where did it come from or whatever? Everybody knows, oh, this came from our master semantic model. We know it was refreshed this morning at 5 a.m. We know how it was processed. We know the calculations that went into it. So instead of debating whose data is right, you get right into how do we run our business better? What insights can help us? What actionable insights do we need to take? And so I'll kind of turn it over to Brent to dive more into some of the fabric pieces and semantic model and all that good stuff.
Yeah, for sure. So what I'm showing on the screen here is that sort of lineage view of what's going on in the workspace. And this, there's a lot more in the workspace. If I were to clear the filter down here and scroll, we've got a lot happening, which is something I like to emphasize with Fabric is that you have more elements in there, but we're going to look in a minute at how they work together. But the idea is we're pumping all of our data into right here is where we have our core semantic models. So that's where all of our measures exist, all of our business logic, and then that's feeding these downstream reports. So it does really give that just kind of end-to-end view of how your data is moving from step to step. Especially if we were doing more complex data transformations, we could even have more steps ahead of that model in this workspace. But yeah, Fabric opens up a lot of doors for those things. So, okay, so first thing I wanted to kind of show here is that one of the number one requests we get from clients pretty much since I've been in Power BI is, how do I write back to my data? I want to click on something, I want to enter a value, I want to change something and write it back. So before, and even still today, there is an option to embed. You'll see the little Power Apps splash screen there right away. But you can actually embed a Power App right into a Power BI report. So this is something that we've done a couple different use cases. Commentary is what this example is built around. We've done some sort of like what if analysis type Power Apps. We've done some where it's responding to like field data coming in. So somebody's going out monitoring, entering values, and they want to be able to do some manipulation or categorization once that data comes in. So the nice thing is this Power App right here, so everything you see in this box on the right-hand side, that lives in our Fulton tenant. So it's out there as a live Power App. We could jump into that interface and interact with it there. But it pulls it right into Power BI so that somebody can fill out a form, modify something. This one was built around comments. We actually just switched over our demo to some new functionality. So we're going to look at that in a minute. But this is sort of how we've done a lot of that in the past. And over on the left here, I don't have a live example, but you see the Power Automate icon. You can also call a Power Automate flow from a Power BI report. So where that comes into play is, let's say you want to have like an on-demand refresh or something. So you want your user to be able to, say, go out, get me the freshest data, pump it into my model. We can pump that into a Power Automate flow, trigger it right from the report. There's some other things you can do with alerts and some other stuff there. So we won't go deep into Power Automate, but just know that it's an option to do this. But what gets me excited is kind of the future state of this. So we're going to take a look at that now.
And as Brent pulls up this next thing, I think every organization has sort of this intelligent automation, business process automation use cases where it's like, man, if we could save 20 hours a month by automating this thing, and the Microsoft Power Platform, its integration with Microsoft 365 is a great tool for that.
There we go. That's the page I want to be on. Okay, so this is kind of the new way of doing this, which it sort of, it does take Power Apps out of the mix. So Power Apps, great. You can do a lot with them. You can do a lot of complex tasks with them. But getting them always talking to Power BI does have some hurdles and some things. So Microsoft, in typical fashion, they rolled out a new feature with a terrible name. I hope it gets a new name. But it's called Translytical Task Flows. So if you follow Fabric, that's their new term. I call them TTFs just because I got tired of saying and typing Translytical Task Flows.
It's a tongue twister for sure.
Yeah, that's one thing that our industry needs, Brent, is more acronyms. So thank you.
Exactly. Well, and there are other task flows that exist in Fabric, so they kind of trip over each other naming things. But the nice thing about this is that this is all happening natively in Fabric. So what we can do here is we can select one. Let's pick one that doesn't have comments. So go down here, and we can say, all right, Urbandale loves Riley's rice rolls. So and we're going to go ahead and we're going to submit this one. It does take a moment when you do the first one because it's waking up some compute behind the hood. But once this one goes through, so what it's doing right now is it's actually writing that comment back to my source data table in Fabric. And then you can see right away, it updated in my table over here and refresh that commentary. So if we wanted to go in and change that, I can click on the same one again and say, oh, never mind. Maybe they don't love it. That's actually less than they bought last time.
And as Brent's typing, this feature was just released here within the last few months.
Yeah.
This is really a Power BI write back. There are some tools in the marketplace where you would spend $100 per user to have this type of capability, the ability to write back, apply a percentage discount right in here. This is now included in your Microsoft Fabric FSKU. And so depending on what FSKU you have, how many people are using it, that functionality is there. And to Brent's point, this is one of the things we're most excited about inside of Fabric. All of our clients have a use case to use something like this. And so really excited to roll that out to our clients.
Yeah, for sure. So you can see that second one I entered much quicker than the first one. So once you kind of wake up the compute under the hood, you can interact with these things at a pretty good clip. So that's just entering comments. We were just, as Robert said, this just came out, in the last month or so. So we've been building demos and learning it on our own. But we threw together another one where you could actually, do some math in your table. So in this case, we called it discount. You could call it rebates, whatever it may be. But, we could say, okay, Costco here for this order, they bought a decent amount. So let's give them a 20% discount or a 20% rebate. So let's enter that. Enter. It should do the math correctly.
And as this is happening, it's so the when I first saw you enter it, I'm like, how does it know which field to go into? But you actually clicked in you have to define, I imagine, the column that you allow to edit, and then you just have to click on the row or whatever it is, and it works, right?
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So you do need to give it some context, and we'll take a look at what's happening kind of behind the scenes here in a moment. But the nice thing about this is that you can select that specific data. You can enter new data. I know one of the tutorials Microsoft built for this was entering new products into a catalog. So you can just enter in your fields, hit submit, and you've got a new entry that's right there ready to be used. And then the other wonderful thing about Fabric, and especially the direct lake data storage, is that it gets us much closer to what can be done in real time than you could do before. So with Power BI Professional, you were limited to how often you could refresh those data models in a given day. With Premium, you got more capability, but it still was a bit of a series of hoops to jump through to get that all working. But here we've got it right in the function, calling, writing back to the data source, and then immediately back into the Power BI report. So it's just tightened up that timeline, and there's less places that we need to go and work on all that configuration in order to get this kind of functionality in place. So
that's cool.
So yeah, a lot of fun there. We'll just briefly, because I know we're getting close. How much time do we have remaining?
We have
5 more minutes.
Okay. So we'll just very briefly take a look at what's powering that. So this is the commentary one. And this is where it gets to be a little more coding heavy. So this is written it's Python that we use to do this one. But really, you can call your data source. So like up here, we're telling it what database to use. We're telling it what fields to use when we get into here. So it's looking for that order ID, and then comment is what we're going to update. So there's a little bit of a learning curve to get these up and going, but the good news is with the ChatGPT and the LLMs that are out there, Python's more approachable than it's ever been. So this is where our team is really diving in. Like Robert said, almost every single client brings up the write back functionality. So we're really looking into how can we build out some of these templates for those common tasks. So lots of stuff out there with the community to explore there too.
And the text is a little small, but I'm assuming there's some restrictions on like the type of data that's entered and formatting and that type of thing.
Yep. No, and I see there's not an easy zoom on this one. There we go. Yeah, so if you know Python, it'll look familiar. In this case, we've even got a SQL query in there that's what's actually doing the update for the selected order ID. So yeah, a lot of great stuff in here. And there's some really good code examples for this out there. If you search translytical task flows examples, there's some stuff that's out there. And as I mentioned, we're building our own kind of in-house as well. Okay, so let's jump back here. I think I got to close some things. Okay, so the next thing we're going to take a look at here is some Copilot.
So save the best for last. I know Copilot. I think you guys have already done a demonstration on it, but as Brent pulls this up here, we get asked all the time, even internally, is Copilot going to replace our Power BI developers? And the first thing that matters, and Brent will show this, is Copilot can't build Power BI reports unless you have a well-built semantic model and a Fabric FSKU. Those are the two things, but Brent will kind of dive in and we'll find out can Copilot build us
we're going to put some live challenges here. Yep. Okay, so Copilot, the nice thing that occurred a couple of months ago is that previously Copilot was only available if you were at the F64 SKU and higher, which what that means is essentially the old premium threshold from a cost standpoint. But a couple months back here, I think around March or so, Microsoft actually adjusted that. So now it's available at all paid Fabric capacities. So it's great news. It makes it much more accessible and available to people who are on those kind of lower tiers. So when it comes to development and sort of, kicking the tires and finding out what it can do, you can do that at a much lower cost than you were able to prior. So great news. But you can see here the Copilot tab right up top. When we click into that one, it's going to give us a couple of suggestions. So, what is this about? Give me a summary. So let's go ahead and just do a summary, and we'll see how it goes here. And if anybody's worked with LLMs or any of the other Microsoft Copilot offerings, you've probably found that if you click it now, you get one result, and if you click it in 10 minutes, you might get something slightly different. So with all of these, there's that caveat. You really need to know your data, know what it's giving you, so that you can spot if it potentially, tripped on itself and pulled in something sort of unexpected. But they have added some really nice pieces to what's in here. So you can see in this case, what it did is it looked at my report page, pulled out all of those key metrics and everything. And if I hover over these, it's going to tell us where it actually pulled those from. So it's going to tell me this one came from the revenue year-to-date card. So it highlighted it up there. When I hovered over that one, you can see it kind of highlighted up in the box up there. So it kind of gives you some breadcrumbs to see where it's pulling that data from. Let's see here if I can get it to do. So I'm asking it to summarize sales by brand for 2024. So we're kind of going away from what's currently displayed on the page. We'll see how it does. All right, so there we go. So we could go back, double check our work, but we can see, it's giving the reference. It generated a table essentially under the hood is what that means. I know it's a little hard to see in the Zoom there, but it's sort of nice if you want to allow people to talk to their data and just ask it some of those basic questions. So if they don't have time to dig through the report and look for something, they can jump in here, just ask some questions. And say, show this as a bar chart.
As you're doing that, is this, it's making me think about the licensing of it. And you talked about how Power BI kind of sits in the middle of Azure and 365.
Yeah. Yep.
Is this Copilot on the 365 side that works for this, or is there some other thing that's
Nope, this is on the Fabric side. So this one, it goes against your Fabric capacity, which is important to know, because if you put this out there with no guardrails, somebody could go in there and chat with their data all day long and use up all your capacity. So that is sort of an area you have to take a look at. Microsoft did also make it so that you can purchase a capacity specifically for Copilot in that Fabric world. So you could buy a smaller capacity and just say, okay, this small one is going to power everything Copilot. When it's used up, it'll just reject queries. So there are some ways that you can kind of put some barriers around that. And you can also limit it to certain entre groups as well. So if you don't want, somebody in some obscure department coming in and burning it all up, you can limit some of those things. So there's lots of stuff you can do. But the nice thing about this one I wanted to show is when I asked it to show it as part of a visual, it gives me another option here. So it pulled in the same values. If I hover over, I can compare those to what it gave me in the list up above. But the nice answer one here is that it gave me explore this answer. And data explorations are a new thing that has been sort of popping up in a lot of spots in the Power BI interface. But what's nice about this view is that now I can jump out and it's showing me in the model exactly which fields it used to do this. So in this case, it just went out. We've got our sales database, which is our fact table behind this semantic model. But it's telling me that it used brand, and then it just did a sum on the revenue field. So in a business scenario, I would want to go in and train it to say, okay, don't do a sum on this field. Use the measure that we created up above. So that's where we still need to go in and do a little bit of tuning to make sure it's going to the right spot. But we at least have the transparency to see what it did under the hood to calculate that result. So it's definitely coming along. I would say, and Robert can confirm this, for the first 2 years of Fabric, I was pretty cold on Copilot. It definitely it didn't do what I expected it to do. I feel like I still spent as much time trying to prompt it to do the right thing when I could just jump in and build it. So I've been pretty cold. I'm warming up. It's gotten better. Over this past winter, they actually changed out a lot of the LLM pieces under the hood that are powering this specific Copilot. So it's much smarter about reading from semantic models, which is good news. So we can get to usable output pretty quickly. They've also improved how it handles the DAX language. So DAX is a language very specific to Power BI and that ecosystem that, I've got somewhere around here, I've got the big DAX guide, which is, big, thick book that you could club somebody with. But there's a lot of nuances to how that language operates. And historically, the LLMs have been pretty bad at interpreting it. So they've made up a lot of ground on that, not only within Copilot, but some of the other LLM tools that are out there. So I've been really big on the Anthropic Claude models lately. They understand DAX. They give me great output. So yeah, the future is looking better all the time for Copilot. I would say you definitely want to explore it kind of in a contained environment with your data and with your team, not only to make sure that you're giving good output, but then also that you have the right data protections in place too. So that's the other piece where we're spending a lot of time on kind of that prepping data for AI, making sure the metadata is right, making sure the security is right, so that we don't inadvertently expose something or, give anybody misleading information. So
I need to sneak in a quick question there on Copilot. How are you seeing Copilot agents kind of interacting with Fabric?
Yeah. Yep. And so there is, we didn't have time to dig into that, but inside of Fabric, you can build essentially the same Copilot agents you can do elsewhere in the Microsoft ecosystem. So you can go in and you can define what the agent is, give it sort of that seed prompt where it says, okay, you are an expert in customer service for sales orders. So you can start from that point. You can give it very specific data sources. So both within your models or anything that's living in OneLake. So you could say, use the sales order table, use the customer table from the model, but also pull in this sales representative information from an Excel file that's sitting out in OneLake. So you can combine those bits of information and then you can tune it to give better output that's specific to your context. So that is where we're seeing, when it comes to, rubber meets the road and people actually using these LLM tools, instead of the big tools that can sort of do everything under the sun and you can ask it whatever you want, the tools that are more successful are actually those small language models where you give it a very defined set of data. It's solving a specific problem or a specific subset of problems. Those are the ones that you can get up and running and operational in a much more cost-effective manner and much faster. The do-it-all, like crystal ball models, that you're looking at years of development to get those to behave the way you want them to. But for one specific task, you're looking at a couple of weeks, potentially even a couple hours, depending on the task. So,
right.
That's very cool. Well, I think you, to bring it full circle to one of the first slides, I think that you shared, Brent, was the horse And you talked about like where are we at in the journey. I would agree that like Copilot's also about that same spot,
Yep.
right, across the board, not just necessarily in Fabric, but because I wouldn't know that because I haven't dealt with that, but like definitely in other aspects as well. So all right, well we've gone a little over time, but tons of great information. So Robert and Brent, I want to say thanks very much for your participation. I do want to encourage everyone, if they have any Power BI questions, like reach out to these folks on LinkedIn, ping them, send a message to us. We know how to get a hold of them. And the other thing I would say is please join our Microsoft 365 Champions community that we have on LinkedIn. That's where we post about this stuff. We're also, our goal as we're getting more folks joining or participating and just like following whatever, is that we've seen some examples of, which has been great, where people are asking questions in there, and then we're able to kind of with the community answer some of the questions or have resources that can answer those questions. So that's a big part of what we're hoping to create, is not only bring sessions and content like this, so we bring experts like Brent and Robert to the table, but also that we can help each other out by asking questions and engaging. And or if there's other content that you want, we've got other vendor partners and networking ecosystem partners that we might be able to bring to the table to help with that as well. So thanks everyone for joining who watched live, as well as for those watching in the future. We look forward to seeing you next month with our next session. Thanks a lot.
Awesome. Thanks for having us.
Take care, everybody.
Everyone.